But when your main roster debut comes up, it's not going to be like at a regular show. Like you're going to debut at WrestleMania 29, which I was actually there for my bachelor party, which is hilarious.
Really?
So your debut match is my bachelor
That's
party,
awesome.
and here we are now talking both New England boys. So it's very interesting.
That's awesome.
That here we are now.
Yeah.
But you beat Chris Jericho on your big first night. Was there any pushback that you know of Chris Jericho saying like, I'm going to lose to a brand new character and he's got a dancing gimmick?
Chris and I were always really cool, and I can understand. I mean, he's a legend in our business, and he's done a lot, and he was one of the reasons why I got into wrestling. I remember when he came over to WWF in I think 99 or 98, whatever. I was just getting in the business at the time, and then a couple of trainees, the guys I was training with, thought that was the coolest thing. We're huge fans of Chris, and I still am. I think he was under the impression that he might have been working someone else going into WrestleMania 29. I believe it was Ryback, and then that got switched up, and Ryan ended up. I think he worked with Mark Henry, or Kalisto, or something like that. So I think February or March, they're like, hey, or not they, Vince is like, Mr. McMahon, and goes, hey, we're gonna have you work with the kid, the dancing gimmick, and you have 5 to 6 weeks to build this angle to Mania, and he's going to go over on you. So, I mean, he's probably like, I can understand him being a little irked about the situation, but I kind of felt like I was in the crossfire between, I'm like this young, I wasn't that young, but I'm like debuting on the main roster after being developmental for 25 years. And, I'm working with a guy that I looked up to, a legend. I don't want to disappoint him. And I'm Vince's pet at the time. He's producing the vignettes and the montages and stuff. So I feel like I'm kind of stuck in the middle here where like Chris, I think personally likes me, but he's not too excited about wrestling a ballroom dancer at WrestleMania. Which I can understand, Do you
think there was, you bring up crossfire, do you think there was some friction between Vince and Jericho and you were like put in the middle of like, oh, we're going to let you take all the heat versus each one take the heat?
I don't think I took any heat, but I feel like maybe Vince and Chris had a different agreement. And I mean, I put myself in his shoes. I'd probably be a little pissed off too, if I was with the company for, he was there 20 or 15, 20 years old, whatever, do the math. And, if you're kind of told one thing and then, something else happens, I don't know, but that's between them. And, and Vince didn't even want us to have a match. It was supposed to be that he wanted everyone to chant bullshit. Because my whole thing in developmental was like, Johnny Curtis is a good wrestler, no personality. So I was just like that generic dude in tights, just like good wrestler, And it's funny because Norman Smiley's kind of the same analogy, and we always joke about it. Because Norman was always a real good shooter, Not that I'm a shooter, but he was a good catch wrestler in Mexico and all over. And then he made all his money doing a goofy big wiggle gimmick.
I was going to say, WCW, he was not doing that.
He didn't need to do anything, but he was over. And I remember having meetings with Vince, and he's just like, I have a whole roster full of really good wrestlers. You're not a wrestler, you're a ballroom dancer. So I'm like, all right. So now I kind of like, I'm trying to like figure out how to translate that onto television. So I was more nervous in the back in Gorilla, preparing to go out through the curtain for live television, trying to remember my dance routine with whatever dancer I had, or my promos where I'd have to stay in this character voice. Because I was always comfortable in the ring. Like I grew up wrestling since I was 16. So like you get me in the ring, I mean, that's where I'm comfortable, but he didn't want me to be a wrestler. He wanted me to be a ballroom dancer. So going back to WrestleMania, he's like, I don't want you to have a wrestling match. I want Chris to go and beat the shit out of you for 3 or 4 minutes, and then you just roll him up. And I want everyone in New York to chant bullshit. But they gave us too much time. They gave us like 12 to 15. And I think Chris knew that I was a good hand. And he's like, let's show them what we could do. So Chris wanted to have a good match, and so did I. But I think Vince just wanted it to be more of a spectacle, like
right.
gimmick,
Showcase your character versus showcase your wrestling skills.
But as as a good worker, like Chris is a great worker, and I consider myself a decent worker. It's hard for you to dumb down, especially at WrestleMania where you got a talent debuting. You really want to go out and fucking show everybody what you could do.
Of course.
But Vince didn't want that, and in retrospect, kind of playing it back, it made sense what he was doing. Like he is displaying a full 3 to whatever WrestleMania is, 12 hours now show. And he wants everything on that show to be a little bit different. You can't have 15 really just good wrestling matches. It has to be, you go to the zoo and you want to see different animals, and I didn't understand that at the time, but your ego takes over. You want to like prove a point to everybody that you can go out and kill it. But
right, of course.
You got Seth Rollins on the show. You got Randy. I mean, there's a bunch of great wrestlers, and that wasn't our job for the night.
Right. Well, WrestleMania 29, you had Rock versus Cena the second time, twice in a lifetime. CM Punk versus Undertaker. They even dropped a match. It was Brodus Clay and Tensai and the Funky Dactyls versus Cody, Damian Sandow, and the Bella Twins. And I talked to Cameron about that. I interviewed her, and she was like, they had special gear. They had everything. They were at Gorilla. And
I remember that.
And suddenly they're told, "Oh, you're not wrestling." And I asked her about that feeling, and you're telling me like you're out there, and you're like, "I think my match was too long," and they're like, "We didn't even get to have our match."
Yeah,
which is unfortunate for them. I described it as being at the altar of your wedding, and suddenly someone's like, "Oh, the groom's not here."
It sucks too, because I'm not sure the stats, but sometimes that's your only shot at a Mania match. I'm not sure. Obviously, I assume Naomi went on and had more WrestleMania.
She has definitely.
And I'm not sure if Brodus did. I'm not sure if Cameron did. Maybe Baldo didn't either. I don't know. Maybe that was Baldo's last Mania, really, or it would have been. But just I remember being right there when that happened, and just the pro that Tensai is, because he's a Boston guy too.
Yeah.
Everyone's selling it, and just the old grizzly wily veterans like, well, it is what it is. He's not going to put it over and let everyone see that he's upset. I thought that was impressive to, I assume they all still got paid though, right? So,
well, the next night on Raw, they had their match, and again, Cameron was like, "That was not the same thing." You could have we're talking about you versus Jericho WrestleMania. You could have fought Jericho the next night on Raw, and guess what? I wouldn't have remembered off the top of my head because
Super Bowl or
WrestleMania versus Raw, completely different.